Hey everyone, Jeff here. Today I wanted to shoot a video talking about my trip to the Princeton Record Exchange yesterday. It was just a lot of fun. I was there for like 3 hours just looking through everything that they had, and I managed to find quite a number of things. Lots of CDs, some LPs, and this video I'm just going to show all that. So hopefully you guys enjoy what I have to show. And like I said, I am going to show the CDs here. Usually I don't, for whatever reason, I don't show the CDs that I pick up on this channel. But I got a lot of cool stuff, and lately I've been buying a little bit more on the CD side than the vinyl side, just because going off to school soon, I'm going to have to listen to my stuff digitally for better or worse. So I like having CDs where I can rip them onto the computer and bring them with me wherever. So didn't get as much vinyl as I usually would have, but still a number of things. And hopefully you guys enjoy what I'm going to show. So I'll start it out with what we've got in the background, and that is Afterthoughts by No Sound. These guys are from Italy, and they're on the K-Scope label. And this is their most recent album from 2013, I believe. And they kind of do like a atmospheric, dreamy, progressive rock type of sound. And I hadn't heard this album before, and it was only like $8 brand new. So really, really happy to get that. And it was one of those things where I was looking in the recent markdown bin, and I was just amazed that it was as cheap as it was. So really, really cool to get that. Also found a copy of King Crimson's Red. I've enjoyed this album for a pretty long time. Starless has always been one of my favorite King Crimson tracks, but I just never had a copy on vinyl, so really, really nice to get that. I also found Blackfield 4, and this is, I'm pretty sure, the most recent Blackfield album, and this is also on the K-Scope label. From what I understand, Steven Wilson's involvement in this album is a little bit more limited than it was in some past Blackfield albums. But I listened to this last night, and it's got some really strong moments, very mellow, kind of chill out sort of release, pretty cinematic sounding at times, but pretty good stuff. And this was like only $9, I think. So really good deal on it too. Now, the highlight of the trip for me, I think, was this bootleg here, and that is Genesis Swelled and Spent, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway Live. And the recording quality here is pretty terrible. It's clearly a guy with a tape recorder in the audience, and you know, at times it can be a little bit tough to make out exactly what's going on in the music. But it's still, you can tell it's a very, very strong performance of The Lamb, and for me, The Lamb has been and probably will always be my favorite album. So to get a bootleg of it is pretty damn cool, and I was just ecstatic when I saw this in the new arrivals bin. So very, very cool to get that. This was another pretty cheap recent markdown that I found. This is the first Lunatic Soul album, and Lunatic Soul is a side project of, it's like Marizus Duda or something like that, the lead singer of Riverside. And I'm really bad with pronouncing names sometimes. But in any case, I really dig Lunatic Soul. And, you know, this was only like $8, $7, something like that. So it was really cheap, and double album. It's on really nice white vinyl. So very, very happy to get that. This was another one that I saw in the new arrivals bin. Refugee. This was only $4, and this has Patrick Moraz, best known for working with the Moody Blues, and he was on the Yes Relayer album. So, you know, really cool to get this. I've heard a lot of great things about this album over the years, but I just never managed to get a copy. So really, really happy to have that. Now, I listened to the other Robert Fripp and Andy Summers album, but this is Bewitched. The other one that I heard, I can't remember the name of it, but I did really enjoy it. I thought it was pretty interesting guitar music, and this was pretty cheap. It was only a few bucks, so figured I'd pick it up and give it a shot. So really happy to get that. Next one here is an upgrade copy of Wind and Wuthering by Genesis. This is, you know, been in my collection forever. It's just the copy that I had before was pretty beat up, and you know, it started getting a little bit scratchy because I listened to it so much. So in any case, really, really nice upgrade copy here, pretty minty. So really happy to get that. And the last record that I saw here was Jeff Wayne's musical version of The War of the Worlds. I've seen this posted in the VC a couple times. I know a lot of people really enjoy this. I saw Justin Hayward's on it, and from what I understand, this is kind of like a rock opera sort of thing, or uh, something along those lines. So, you know, saw this. It was like $6, I think. So I figured I'd give it a shot. And like I said, I haven't listened to most of the stuff here, so unless it's an upgrade copy or something, I might not really know a ton about it. But anyway, I also found this DVD, Live After Death by Iron Maiden, and I've been a big Iron Maiden fan for a long time, and I'm pretty sure that this is from the Power Slave tour, but not entirely certain. But anyway, it's a DVD. Really excited to watch this, and very, very cool. Now, I got a bunch of CDs. I've been trying to buy more CDs lately just because with going off to school soon and everything, it's better for me to digitize stuff so that way I still have the ability to listen to it while I'm at school. So I've been buying a little bit more CDs, and actually all the CDs that I picked up at the Princeton Record Exchange were under $5. So I only really looked through the budget section, but I just found a ton of stuff that I wanted. So first one I want to show here is Regatta de Blanc by The Police, and really good album. This is the one that has Message in a Bottle in it, and yeah, really good album. I like The Police a lot. Stuart Copeland is an outstanding drummer, so really happy to have this music because I hadn't ever really heard the album beforehand. So cool to get that. Both Sides by Phil Collins. I'm not the biggest fan of most of the Phil Collins solo stuff that I've heard, but this was $2, so I figured give it a shot. I haven't heard it before. So picked that up. And I also got this, Phil Collins Big Band, A Hot Night in Paris. This is basically big band versions of a lot of Genesis songs, Phil Collins solo stuff. He also does like Milestones by Miles Davis. But the thing that really grabbed my attention is the Los Endos Suite, and that's the only song that I've listened to so far, and it is really, really cool. So even if the rest of it isn't all that great, which I don't know yet, I haven't heard it, hearing the big band arrangement of Los Endos is pretty cool. So very, very happy to get that. Then I also found a copy of Shadow of the Moon by Blackmore's Night, which is Ritchie Blackmore's project, of course, from Deep Purple, Rainbow, all that sort of stuff. So pretty excited to hear what this is like. This has been a favorite of mine for a pretty long time, but I just never had a copy on CD, and that is Afraid of Sunlight by Marillion. And this comes with the second disc with some bonus tracks and stuff. So really, really great album. I love a lot of the Hogarth era Marillion stuff. So this was only a few dollars. So really, really cool to get that. You know what? I'm going to flip the record real quick. All right. Sorry about that. Also found a copy of Free as a Bird by the Beatles. And this track, I actually don't know if I have on any other format. It might be in the anthology series, but I'm not sure of that. But anyway, this was just a cool little piece, and it was pretty cheap. So I had to get that. Now, this grabbed my attention. I really didn't know much about this before picking it up. I did a little bit of research, and from what I understand, this is a pretty good modern classical album, and that is Anthony Phillips and Andrew Skeet's Seventh Heaven. So it's a double disc. It was really cheap, and I, of course, am a pretty big Anthony Phillips fan, as you know, he was the original guitarist in Genesis and all that stuff. So you know, he's had a great solo career too. Put out a lot of great albums. So very excited to hear what that is like. Also found "Calling All Stations" by Genesis, and I've heard this digitally before, but it didn't make much of an impression on me. But I figured I'd pick it up on CD, listen to it a little bit in the car, and see if my opinion changes. So for $2, might as well give this one a second chance. So very cool to get that. I also found "Everybody Loves a Happy Ending" by Tears for Fears. And I know that my dad, who isn't really the biggest Tears for Fears fan, absolutely loves this album. From what I understand, it's kind of Beatlesque in a way. So, I'm pretty excited to listen to this. I like a lot of the 80s Tears for Fears stuff too. So, really cool to get that. This was pretty cool. Rare Meat, the early works of Frank Zappa. So this is a bunch of stuff that he did in the early '60s prior to the Mothers of Invention. And I've seen this on vinyl before, but it was always kind of just out of my price range, too expensive. And this CD was like $4, I think. So I'm kind of curious just to hear what this music is like. And nice packaging and everything. So very cool to get that. And this was kind of interesting too here. Paul McCartney's New, which is his new album that came out in 2014, I think. I haven't heard it, but I did enjoy a lot of the other recent Paul McCartney albums, like Memory Almost Full, Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. I enjoyed both of those albums quite a bit. So I've heard kind of mixed things about this one, but it was only like $4 again, so I figured I'd give it a shot. Also found one of the newer Tori Amos albums. I think this might actually be her newest from 2014. But anyway, Unrepentant Geraldines by Tori Amos. And Tori Amos does that kind of art pop thing in the vein of Kate Bush that I really enjoy. And especially a lot of her earlier stuff, I really, really enjoy. So figured might as well give this a shot, and it was pretty cheap. So very cool to get that. Found the Marillion Essential Collection, which isn't something that I would usually get, but it has a couple tracks here, like Lady Nina and Grendel, which aren't actually on albums, but were released as like B-sides and stuff like that. So I just figured, this would be a good piece to add to the collection, so that way I have these songs on CD. So very cool to get that. Also got Passion by Pendragon, and this was the album of theirs that came out in 2011, I think. When this came out, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I kind of just felt like when they were playing that kind of more heavy style that they started experimenting with on the Pure album, they just kind of lost some of the identity and what really grabbed me about their work from the 80s and 90s. And to me, this album just never really grabbed me in the same way that like the Masquerade Overture did or something like that. But I need to give it some more listens and see if my opinion has changed at all, because a lot of people really hold this album in high regard. So I'll give it another shot. Also got Watcher of the Skies, Genesis Revisited by Steve Hackett. He recently did a second Genesis Revisited and did a whole tour with it and everything. But this is the original, and I started listening to this. The version of like Dance on a Volcano is so different from the Genesis version, and I'm trying to think, like John Wetton does the vocals on Watch of the Skies. Chester Thompson plays some drums on here. It's just a really incredible lineup, and it's kind of interesting hearing what Steve Hackett did with some of these songs here, because he took a couple risks and changed things around a little bit. But definitely cool to get, and I'm happy to have it. Also found this Tomorrow We Die Alive by Born of Osiris, and usually I just can't get behind deathcore, metalcore. No, I won't. I don't want to say entirely, but usually that style of music doesn't do very much for me. But Born of Osiris has always kind of been like just an anomaly for me, because they're a deathcore band. They tour with deathcore bands and stuff, but their music has always struck me as so much more sophisticated and technical and progressive. and I've always just really been a fan of these guys. So haven't heard their newest album, which this probably came out a couple years ago at this point, but definitely happy to have a copy of that, and I'll give it a listen. I found Living Years by Mike and the Mechanics. I've heard the first self-titled Mike and Mechanics album, and I thought it was okay. Nothing entirely up my alley, but again, Genesis fan, so I kind of have to give this a shot. And from what I understand, a lot of people do really like this album, so I'm excited to hear it. One more little stack of CDs here. Flaming Pie by Paul McCartney. It's been years and years and years since I last heard this. I'm pretty sure, maybe like 8 years ago, I checked out this CD from the library and listened to it a couple times. But now I actually have my own copy and give it a couple spins. Script for a Jester's Tear by Marillion. I've had this on vinyl for a while. It's one of my favorite albums. Absolutely love it. But for whatever reason, I just didn't have it on CD, so now I do. And this really grabbed my attention here. Deseo by John Anderson. This is on the Windham Hill label, which I never actually knew that John Anderson did anything on the Windham Hill label. So usually what that means is that this is going to be kind of more in the new age sort of direction, which isn't necessarily a bad thing at all. So very cool to get that. Also found Parallel Realities by Jack DeJohnette. And if memory serves, I think Pat Metheny plays on this as well. So Jack DeJohnette is just, one of the best jazz drummers. And this album came out in 1990, I think. So, never heard this one before. And I'm pretty excited to give it a few spins. Also found Dance Into the Light by Phil Collins, and this I think came out in like 96, somewhere around there. I don't actually know if this is supposed to be all that great of an album or anything. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not the biggest into Phil Collins solo stuff, but again, it was cheap and I figured I'd give it a shot. I also found Splendor Solace by the Tea Party. And these guys are a kind of more pop-inclined progressive rock group that I've heard of before, and I've heard some samples of, but never actually got an album. So now I have one, and excited to hear how it is. This really grabbed my attention because I'm a big fan of both David Sylvian and Robert Fripp. And this is the album called The First Day. Both are really excellent musicians in my opinion, and I'm kind of just curious what this collaboration is going to sound like. So really, really cool to get that. And last but not least is We Know What We Like, the music of Genesis, performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. Excuse me. I saw this and I was really, really looking forward to hearing it. They do Entangled, Madman Moon. They do a couple medleys here, which include like Duke's Travels, The Knife. They do Can You Tilly and the Coastliners in its entirety. So I'm really curious what these orchestral versions of Genesis tracks are going to sound like. And I'm a big Genesis fan, so anything like this is going to grab my attention. And it's also worth noting that Steve Hackett does play guitar here, and Ian Anderson actually plays flute on I Know What I Like, which is kind of cool. So that's everything that I got from the Princeton Record Exchange. Like I said, it was a pretty big haul, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you all next time.